Interesting to think about NATO and this whole idea of the coalition of the willing. We've been down this road before, haven't we? Trying to get 32 nations to agree on something is like herding cats, and we've seen this coalition go into places like Bosnia and Iraq. But now it's looking like things might be different with the situation concerning Moscow. You have forces in London and Washington that are encouraging Ukrainians to keep fighting, even when it might not make sense. I find this move not only wrong, but dangerous, don't you? It could extend the existing war and even risk regionalizing it. Just imagine if countries like Poland and Lithuania got involved. Or you probably recall that incident with the town of Reni on the river bordering Ukraine and Romania, right? Russians destroyed the port facility with missiles from 1,000 miles away. It was like a warning shot, a clear signal that there's a price to pay for moving into Western Ukraine. And what about our troops in Poland? They're exposed, not difficult to find and easily targeted. It's a situation that requires careful consideration, especially when you think about the insights provided by people like Max Blumenthal, who really understands this subject. Then there's the financial side of things. Have you ever driven through places like Great Falls, McLean, or Potomac, Maryland? Those mansions tell a story about the lucrative rewards for pushing this war in what I call a cash and equipment swap with Ukraine. It's as if we're sending $1 billion worth of equipment, but much of it just disappears, perhaps into the black market, and the cash never really gets to where it's supposed to go. So you see, the situation is complex, filled with potential risks and uncertainties. I think we must proceed with caution, wisdom, and a strong commitment to peace and security. What's happening right now demands our attention and our understanding. It's a matter of international importance, and we can't afford to make hasty decisions. Let's hope for a careful and thoughtful approach from those in charge. The situation we're looking at involves funds that are sort of laundered from Congress over to the Defense Department into the military industries. A lot of it then finds its way back in terms of profits to people who are shareholders in the industries or working there. Even political action committees benefit through campaign contributions. Well, I don't know all the details. I think this observation is absolutely right. A larger issue here is that there's now discussion behind the scenes, a feeling that maybe we should get out of this before it gets worse. People are saying that in the White House, the Department of Defense, and the Department of State, but there's chaos. We've never had a coherent strategy, and we've been left with outrageous claims and policy stances that are hard to retreat from. If the stance is that we are here until Russia is destroyed and Ukraine is liberated, it suddenly becomes apparent that Russia's not going away. Ukraine could vanish, and this war is not going well. More tanks, F-16s, or anything else sent won't make any difference. At that point, what are you supposed to do? Admit you were wrong. Nobody in Washington ever apologizes for anything or admits they were wrong. In the press, other kinds of statements seem to be coming from the White House, National Security Council staff, State Department, and perhaps even the Department of Defense. They're showing up in outlets like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, suggesting that everything has been given to the Ukrainians and they just haven't been able to make it work. It seems to be a way to conceal the ruthless exploitation of the Ukrainian people for misguided ideas regarding Russia. And now, there's one other aspect that we must not lose sight of. If you're a member of the ruling globalist neocon clique that runs Washington, London, New York City, and big cities in Western Europe, you're in an existential battle with Russia. Remember, Russia is seen as this evil state with a national identity rooted in its culture, history, ethnicity, and language. If we lose to Russia, then we're exposed to criticism as frauds, as failures, and things could actually turn around in Europe. National parties could come to power and our position could become untenable. We've already got problems with figures like Donald Trump who advocate for something called America, along with an American national identity, history, and culture. It seems there's more going on here than we realized. And there's another level of this conflict that isn't getting much attention in the United States, and that's the financial war. Russia, China, and India want to de-dollarize. They want to get out from under our financial system. We thought that once we sanctioned everybody opposed to us, they wouldn't be able to do business, export, or import anything, but we were completely wrong. Once you leave Europe and North America, the rest of the world seems willing to do business. The Russians, along with the Chinese and Indians, have decided to move to a gold-backed currency to get out from under the United States. We may have scoffed at that idea, but it's serious. Remember when Bernanke, the former Fed chairman, testified that gold didn't have any real value, and when asked why banks maintain it, he said it was just a tradition. That's not the whole truth. We don't know how far this is going to go or how quickly it will progress, but relying entirely on fiat currency that you can print as much of as you want is frightening. We haven't seen the economic collapse we anticipated in Eastern Europe and Asia, and it's not going to happen. The war is now disastrous for everyone. In talking to people like Max Blumenthal, it's been identified that there's a minority in the United States that has benefited from the conflict. That's probably also true in France, Britain, and to a lesser extent Germany, but virtually everybody else sees war as extremely bad for business. The Chinese have wanted this to end for a long time. Their One Belt, One Road initiative, which creates incredible connectivity between the Pacific and the Atlantic, runs through Europe. But how do you run commerce through Europe on high-speed rail? How do you exchange goods and services if you can't do it? I think it's genuine that countries like Saudi Arabia don't see any benefit to watching this disaster unfold. Beyond that, what is their goal? It seems like the Saudis are demonstrating that they've had enough of dealing with us. I think they've suddenly turned, and judging by the evidence in the press, it appears they're prepared to walk away from the Abraham Accords. The Chinese have been instrumental in fostering a new relationship with Iran, helping the Gulf Arabs and Saudi Arabia build a new relationship with Iran that seems to be improving and doing well. In a sense, this might be payback. Russia and China have both helped end the conflict, so now they're going to turn their attentions to Ukraine to see if they can help there. Beyond that, there may be other areas where there could be economic benefits for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia imports most of its food, and Ukraine and Russia are some of the world's leading producers, so I'm sure all of these things are bound up together in one way or another. But I wouldn't dismiss what the Saudis are doing as unserious or insincere. I believe it's quite real. But you're right. For the reasons we discussed at the beginning, Washington can't walk away from this. Privately, it seems there's a bet being made in Moscow that governments will turn over in Europe. You may see Macron go, probably Scholz and his group as well, and there could be some shifts in policy as a consequence. Whether or not the new group that comes in will make a profound difference, it soon is open to question. But if you look at popular polling, support for the anti-Russian crusade in Eastern Europe has largely vanished. There's still some support, but not on the scale as before. It's probably less than 40 in some countries and fallen. Even in Poland, I saw a poll that said 52 of Poles still favored aid to Ukraine, but they didn't want to join the war against Russia. I hope the Polish government's paying attention to this, especially with elections coming up this fall. In some cases, like Poland, you may have a government that says, well, if we jump into this war, we can suspend those elections and stay in power. But who knows? It's impossible to know with precision. My sense is that there's no real coherent strategy and no real leadership from Washington. On the one hand, you have empty, arrogant, self-important pronouncements coming out of the Senate from people like Romney. On the other hand, you have people wandering around in the dark asking, how do we get out? How do we get out? I wish I could paint a better picture, but the situation seems chaotic at the moment. Someone needs to stand up and lead us in the right direction, but I wouldn't expect that to happen right now, especially with President Biden in the White House. Just the other day, someone asked me what I thought was happening in the White House. I told them that I didn't really know the details, but the situation looked a lot like Weekend at Bernie's. It's seen as very bad by the globalists and neocons who've had success in Western Europe and the United States in destroying national identity, opening borders, and crushing anyone who suggests that human beings have an identity at all. They insist that all of it is a social construct of no meaning. The fear is, what if we lose to Russia?